Welcome, everyone, to the Gamemode Creative Podcast. This is episode 9. We haven't been doing this for a full year yet. We've been doing it for about, 10 months?
Something like that. Yeah.
9 months? But we're only on episode 9, so essentially one episode a month.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm MegRae, and joining me is Rainboom.
Hi.
And today's topic is a very simple, basic one, so I'm not sure how much we're going to have to say about it, but I still wanted to discuss it, and that's talking about the differences between solo and group projects and which ones we prefer and the upsides and downsides of each one. So I wanted to ask you first if you do have a preference for one or the other. And you can relate it to Minecraft, or you can relate it outside. But I'm thinking specifically of Minecraft. But I'm curious, have you ever done a group project in Minecraft before?
Oh, yeah.
I know you've worked on solo stuff.
Yeah,
so you have done both. Do you have a preference?
Yeah, so basically, and I definitely do not want to introduce anything that has nothing to do with Minecraft, because that would be an entirely different set of pros and cons, I think. Especially because if it's something where I know the people I'm working with in person, right?
Something that's along the creative nature, because that does have different things entailed with it.
Oh, hugely. So in that case, then, everything would either have to do... Well, actually, no. I will probably keep it Minecraft related, because even with my stuff in radio, those are people I know in person, so that kind of working relationship is a little different. So let's go with Minecraft, especially because this is normally... At least from what I know. There could be some, if you're listening, you maybe have a group of friends you know in real life, and you do have group projects, and so that kind of working relationship is different maybe from what I was going to get at, and that's kind of communicating with people that we only know over the web. Like a lot of my friends that I speak with, whether it's in VCs or doing stuff in Minecraft, or even just being on servers, a lot of these people are usually just over the web, right? Like it's not often that you actually get to meet these people in person. Much like our case with this podcast, actually, believe it or not. I'm not sure if we've been able to convince you based on how we've been able to get the audio out to you, but Meg and I are in 2 completely separate rooms. I probably shouldn't say this, but I guess here we go anyway, that we are 2 completely separate places in doing this. But anyways, I might go on a tangent there, going back to your question, Meg. I would say...
Which one do you prefer?
What do I prefer? Exactly. So that was a long-winded lead up into my answer, which is I'd be biased by saying solo, because most of my projects have been solo, and most of them have been suited to be solo just because I know that I have probably the best grasp of the standards that I hold in my builds. Now, have I done group projects? I did say yes. But when I say group projects, I think the most I'd probably say is collaborating with people in build games. Like if I go to a gaming server and there's probably a build battle going on, then that's probably like those very, very short-term projects. I have yet to actually, I think, I mean, I have to kind of jog my memory. Maybe there might be something where we work on a project, but everybody has different parts of, let's say if it's like a whole map or something, right? And everybody's been tasked with, okay, you're going to work on this part of the map, you're going to do this part of the map. So maybe in that sense, yes, but I don't know if I'd really count that as a group project in the sense of you're working on the same build space. If you don't know, it's like working on a group working on a neighborhood versus a group working on a single house. I don't know if there really is any much of a difference between them. I guess it's just
there can be a difference,
right.
And we can talk about the differences and why one is better than the other. I also, just so we're on the same page, I also prefer solo projects, and there's a lot of different reasons for that. But now I wanted to ask this, since you brought up build battles being a collaboration thing.
Yeah.
Have you done it with people where you were in a VC with them and able to collaborate with them verbally, or was it always with strangers? Because I've done the team build battle before, and it's always with someone I don't communicate with them. I've never met them before, so you can't really collaborate that way.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious if you've actually done a collaborative build.
Okay.
Where you could communicate with the people more.
See, the only reason why I'll ever hop onto one of these gaming servers is if I'm in a VC. So yes, every time I've done these, it's always been with whenever somebody was in a VC with me. So I was chatting with them, and usually in a party, and probably just have maybe we might split teams or something. But there's always somebody who, if I was paired with them, I'd be communicating with them. So it's kind of like we are collaborating in a sense where it is more direct. There is that communication. There's more instant feedback than simply just going with a stranger and just trying to build and hope you can read each other's mind or something like that.
I was going to say that is one of the key points with group projects, is that you have to have good communication and collaboration. Otherwise, it just isn't going to work.
Yeah.
So you can't just go in blindly, and especially verbal communication in a VC is definitely much, much easier than text communication. You can get a lot more ideas across quicker and you can communicate faster. It's just overall so much easier, because then you can also work while you communicate, which is kind of annoying in Minecraft when you're trying to type out instructions and you're having to take a break from whatever you were doing in order to tell people what you want them to do.
Right. And we don't type as fast as we speak, as much as I'd like to do
we
that.
don't. Yeah,
Yeah.
It just saves a lot of time.
Exactly. Now, let me take the question, if you don't mind me asking you then in turn, because you've done it where it's always been total strangers. How have you found that experience? I mean, it kind of probably relates back to...
Are we talking specifically about Build Battle? Because I have done collaborations with people...
Without communication? Maybe we can generalize it if that's the case.
Well, not without communication. There was communication, but not generally in a VC.
Oh, like not
It's with
not
people
live.
I've done, for example, I've entered contests with team builds with people before.
Okay. Yeah.
So we've had to build something together for a competition.
Okay.
But those were harder because I wasn't in a VC with them, and we did have to communicate by text. And there's also some other factors involved with why I prefer solo. Maybe I should just go down my whole list. That's one of them.
Sure.
It does require more communication, which just takes more time. It also requires you both have the same perspective on what you want from the build. You have the same ideas, or not even the same ideas. You have the same vision for the same ambition, I guess, too, for what
goal.
You want the build to accomplish.
Yeah.
That's another thing is I did do that collaborative build with some of my viewers at one point, and it didn't go quite like I was hoping it would, but I also wasn't expecting too much because I know I tend to have a lot more patience with a build than most people. That's why this build took us 4 months to do, but I ended up doing most of the work just because people get bored really quickly. You know, they're not like me, where I have this ambition, this great ambition for what I want this build to look like, and I have these very specific details I want, but not everyone is going to see that unless I can communicate it well, or they might not be as interested in sticking it out for that long.
Yeah.
So in cases like that, though, that's a little bit different because I was hoping for it to be a larger group, but it really wasn't that big of a group. So I ended up having to do most of the build myself. But when it comes to a duo, like 2 people, it's always preferable when you do have the same vision for what you want to build. It also helps if you have a similar build style, so you know how to complement each other well. If you have very drastic build styles, you're going to be clashing all the time, and you're always going to be critiquing the other person's work, being like, I don't like how they did that. And you're always going to want to go back and fix it. That's another thing. I'm super critical of how other people build. So I don't know if there's very many people I would want to do a collaboration with just because I'm really, really picky.
Oh, no, that makes sense. But then it also kind of, when I think about it too, that also brings the question of when exactly do you take the wheel and say, hey, I don't like this, or be a little more vocal about it, or express your concern about something, versus when you just step back and say, you know what, okay, this is a collab, I have to remember that this is with someone else, and then maybe I'll just leave it be, or anything like that.
Yeah, I've had experience with both. Mm-hmm. So
please share.
The contest projects, I felt like I had to take more charge and be like, okay, this is what we're doing, and trying to just take the lead on it. And I did that too for my community collab, which, by the way, if no one's familiar with it, it's the Book of Fairy Tales build. I did have a lot of help with it, but I also built a lot. Some of the pieces to it, someone else might have started, and I went in and finished it for them just because they ran out of time or didn't have time. So some things I half built, but a lot of it I fully built myself.
Oh, okay.
But that was one project where I really did, because it was such a wide variety of builders and skill levels.
Yeah.
I did just have to allow whatever they brought in. So I tried my best to not change what they had given me, because I wanted it to be their work as much as possible.
Oh, yeah.
Now, it was kind of tricky for the ones that I had to finish myself if they were already starting it in a style that I didn't really particularly like. I just kind of had to get over that. But as a whole, it doesn't look bad. The build as a whole doesn't look bad, but you can go in and examine how individual parts obviously are done by different people, by how well they're done.
Or kind of just the style, like the different specifics. Like there's a trademark way of somebody building. You'd see it and you'd say, oh, okay,
especially
this
with the organics. Everyone's got different ways of doing the organics.
Oh, I imagine, yeah. That would figure for sure.
It's just one of those things that you kind of have to, for a build like that, if you're going to introduce a lot of different skill levels, you kind of have to just take what you get.
Yeah, or kind of, I guess, go with the flow even too, right? Because I probably would imagine, like, if I were in that situation, my default thinking would be just to enter with the mindset of going, okay, I'm sure these people probably have some kind of idea of what they want to do, and I'll probably just have to tag along. But then if I don't see any progress or any movement, then maybe that might be the time where I'll have to start considering stepping in a little more and saying, okay, what are we going to do with this? Or how do you want to do this? Like, I imagine the whole behind the scenes process with that build, that fairy tale build, Meg, must have been a lot more than what maybe we see as the end result. And I think that's something interesting to think about when you're looking at a massive collaborative build, whether it's one in a single space, or even something like I've seen people that have collaborated on cities, for example, like I guess taking kind of my area of interest with Minecraft and building, where you've got a lot of people, and these build teams are huge, like you're talking 30, 40 people maybe, or something like that. And however in the world they all collaborate on this project, I can only imagine how much goes on behind the scenes with all the different decisions. So someone saying, hey, I want to build this here, but then whoever is kind of quote unquote manning or leading the project is like, no, that's not going to fit. And then you start to get all these clashes, and eventually where do they come to a consensus or a compromise or anything like that, or if it even is possible? Because sometimes, like, if you, as you said, with contrasting styles, whether both sides or every side gets aggressive and is very protective of their own style, or if they're a little more, let's say, lenient or quote unquote forgiving and saying, all right, I'll let this kind of pass.
This is reminding me a lot of real life in graphic design, and there is a reason you have people called art directors. They are there to control the style and to control what the little people are designing.
Yeah.
So there's always going to be someone who has to be in charge, especially for bigger projects. I know that for my collaborative build, there was a lot of clashing styles, yes, but the main thing I was concerned about was scale. So if something wasn't to scale like I wanted it to be, I would ask it to be redone.
Okay.
And that happened a couple times where someone built something. I'm like, no, that's too big. You're going to have to make it a lot smaller because it's not going to fit into the build. But I let them build it in their own style still, but I just wanted to make sure everything fit to scale. That's something that is really important to think about.
Yeah.
I've never built a city. I don't know what that would be like as a group.
Yeah, because I know that would probably entail, like, I'm just thinking about just purely aesthetics. Like, I know there's some people that have really taken city building to the next level, where they're actually talking infrastructure, the different aspects of an actual city, and they've got different committees that are working on these things. But, like, from a purely building perspective, I'm sure there are people that would be like, oh, you know, I'd love to put a shop here, but then whoever's leading might say, no, that's designed for an apartment or something else. And then there could become, now I'm not saying it's certain, but there could become this conflict of ideas, and then it's just a matter of which one wins over the other. But this is an interesting thing that just came to mind also, Meg, and I guess since you've been talking about some of your experiences with working in groups large and small, have you found, although I guess it also depends on the project, but have you found smaller groups or larger groups to have more of those clashing interest? Because the interesting thing is, and this is what I mean by this, with larger groups, obviously you've got more people, so there's a very high chance that you're going to have all these sorts of different interests and things that people probably think would be sort of their ideal version of the project, right? So you're all probably going to start brainstorming and that sort of thing. But then if there were fewer people, like 3 or even like just 2 people, then I find that it sometimes can. I don't know how your working relationships have been with collaborations with just like one other person, and I think it's just a stronger sense of yourself that could be present in those kinds of conversations. I don't know if you get what I mean, but it's like there are two
Everyone
different.
wants to be in charge.
Somewhat in a sense,
thing.
like with the group setting, you've got more people that are thinking like that, but with like a smaller collaboration, like 2 or 3 people, there's I don't know, for some reason I feel like because there are fewer people, then you're not as afraid maybe to sort of voice out your opinion or sort of suggest what you want to do, or kind of be a little more assertive on what you want to do. Have you found it harder to get your ideas? Okay, this might be a better way to phrase the question. So a little bit of context for you listening, I guess, to kind of hear my thought process out loud. But it all comes to this question: do you find it harder to get your ideas out, or to sort of assert, almost, if assert's the right word, there might be a better word, to assert your ideas in a smaller group or in a larger group?
I actually, in my personal experience, haven't really. I have kind of the opposite problem of what you're suggesting.
Oh.
And let me explain.
Sure.
In the group projects I've done, where it's just 2 builders working on something,
like you and one other person? Yeah.
Yes, me and one other person. I felt like I was doing most of the work, or most of the thought process behind everything. And I think it really depends on who it is you're building with. Because sometimes I wish I could build with someone who was a little more assertive, and who would give me feedback or suggest new things. So far, I've only ever collaborated with people where I was basically the creative director. I was saying, oh, here's what we should do. But I would almost prefer someone to be more assertive and at least suggest things to me, so that I wasn't making all of the decisions. Because at that point, if I'm making all the decisions, I could just be doing a solo project.
It may as well just practically be a solo project, where it's like, oh,
Right.
This is a MegRae build with friend or whoever else it might be.
Yeah.
Just kind of as tagging along for moral support.
That's one of the key, one of the things a group project is meant to do is you're bringing 2 minds together.
Yeah.
So if both minds are not contributing ideas to the project, it I don't know, it just feels like a waste. Why not take those 2 minds and combine your ideas instead of just building this one person's ideas? I've never experienced it, but I'm also very picky about how people build things. And I also don't know how I would feel if they were wanting to go in and change all of my stuff.
Yeah.
So I can't say for sure that I would enjoy it, but I think it would be the more ideal approach to a group project, at least for a 2-person project.
Yeah. With a group,
because I feel like the more you add, the more clashing, and it would just be more chaotic. And the more people you add, the more of you need someone in charge then at that point, saying this is what we're going to do.
Oh, hugely. 100%. Yeah, where I was going to go at is, and I guess maybe this is where I feel like maybe my real life group work might be starting to bleed, just fresh out of university and stuff. So maybe that's also an area, because in those cases, I mean, maybe I'll introduce it for the sake of bringing different sides of group projects that I've seen. Because, there definitely are different types of people, where there are some that simply just don't want to have to worry about taking that assertive position, or saying, okay, to dictate where they want the build to go. Others are very much like, I want to do it this way, otherwise don't even bother arguing with me, or don't join this group. It's like I've seen the extremes and stuff. So I guess the perspective I was walking into this was, if you had an extremely strong personality, or in the sense of a group of 2, if 2 extremely strong personalities come together and build, versus a group of extreme personalities, I think in the group setting it would become pretty chaotic. But at the same time, I feel like it's not just one other person who's there with you in that kind of, let's say if this is a conversation, you've got other people as well that might help either back you up or kind of provide their opinion. So it's like, it's kind of hard to describe, where I feel like there's no one to turn to if you're in a group with just yourself and somebody else, and they're disagreeing with what you're saying, and you don't have anybody backing you up. So I feel like those can get pretty intense as a one-on-one. Like, you see the intensity in like a smaller group setting like that versus the storming that happens with a large number of people that all maybe by chance happen to all have very strong personalities, or strong likings, or reservations to their own style, or something like that. So I guess maybe that's the angle that I took it at. But I see what you mean, obviously, because if your partner or whoever else, or if all your group members maybe aren't pulling their weight, then it also is like, it's hard to really
make
it
having the
precisely.
group
Yeah,
project.
it's sort of just like you're just having a bunch of people just sitting there, and I don't know, however you want to describe it, but it's like there's no diversity.
But then there is the opposite extreme, like you
Yes.
said, where you're always butting heads and not getting anything done because you're disagreeing on everything.
Yeah, but in
so
your
maybe
case,
the key is you just have to find someone that you connect with really well, someone that you have a history with, someone you know very well, that you know that you'll be able to get along with them throughout the process of a group project.
Yeah, or well, I mean, if I was good enough to tell that sort of thing, because unfortunately, I guess the only way I know if I gel well with people is once I actually start working with them and stuff, right? So, because I found. I don't know if you've found this, but for some people, and this is purely observation, there's no positive or negative connotation to this, but your relation with someone as a friend, as maybe just a fellow Minecraft player, whatever, whenever you're in conversation, I feel like sometimes there could be a whole different side to how you work with them versus how you talk with them. And sometimes that also is something that you may never know that might come across in a group project. What I'm going to take is a real life example because I feel like it's still pretty relevant. And even if Minecraft is a game, it probably could still happen, especially if people really have, carry their personality everywhere, where you have a different relationship with people when you're just chatting and not doing a project, just, being able to enjoy your time with them. But then all of a sudden you see their work ethic or how they work in a project, or how reserved they are with their interests, and sort of if they want to impose them on you, or if they're waiting for you to tell them what to do. It's like, it kind of shows once you start working with people. So I find it can get pretty tricky. Now, I'm not here, if you're listening to this, I don't want to scare you in case if you ever want to do a collaboration with any of your friends or any of your Minecraft colleagues or players, fellow folks and stuff, and all of a sudden you're afraid to go ahead and do these collaborations. No, I was just stating that as pure observation, just because
I think for us, it's because we've already said that we prefer solo projects, and we can talk about those in a minute. But I did want to say one more thing about the group projects.
Absolutely, yeah.
Some people, it's perfectly fine if you prefer group projects. I know there's so many people that I think prefer them just because they don't like being alone in a project. They just like having company. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. I personally thrive much better when being creative. I thrive much better when I can zone in on my own thoughts and just work by myself. Yeah. That's just how I work better. But there are some people that always want to have people around or always want to be doing something with someone, and there's nothing wrong with that. So it's just up to your personal preference, really. Yeah. Did you have anything else you wanted to remark about the group projects?
Yeah, maybe it just, for sure. Like to add to that, maybe it just comes down to that feeling of company. Maybe not exactly moral support, but could be moral support if you really are having a mental breakdown with your build or something like that. But
it can be very lonely building by yourself. Yes. I will admit. That is why I live stream it so much, because it helps me feel like I'm not alone, even though I'm all alone in the creative process. Yeah,
I mean, at least you have the wall of text scrolling up and people trying to reach out to you that way, as long as we're not trying to. I mean, then again, I think it's been proven we can't distract you. Like we found it's extremely hard to do so. Even if we try to chat up the entire storm, like we chat up a storm in there, like we can't. You still have your focus. We can't pull you off, and then all of a sudden, you don't really get back to the building mode. So we've and so it's like in the case of I think with my point in terms of just having the company, I guess it's just that feeling of just wanting to have people around, even if it may not mean that they're also helping. It could just be, just having that presence. But also, even if it isn't just a stream, it could even be a more direct presence, where if you are just kind of chatting it out in a VC or some shape or form like that, or them just being there present watching you build in Minecraft or something like that. I think that could be a case as well, if you're just looking for people to be around. And I think just having that company can certainly be valuable, especially it takes away from that feeling of just being by yourself, or that emptiness, I guess, when you're building by yourself. And this is, I think, for my case, I honestly would say that I always have these long-term plans at some point of eventually opening up like my current city project to people being able to build on it, or even just visit. Like ultimately, because the whole end goal of my city is just a place that's explorable and kind of like a virtual reality in a sense, but not really. Just a place to appreciate builds and kind of just explore places around. But that involves people. Like if I'm going to be roaming at a dead city with nobody going around, it's not the same experience as if you've got people that are in and around there, whether they're helping with building or just exploring, just for that community aspect, right? I mean that's the whole point of a server. So I guess that's where the group aspect is. I guess we've probably gone over various reasons or various motivations for working with groups, but I know we also have, I guess, because in my case it's bias, probably. I mean, I'm open to admitting if it's bias, but the solo aspect does have its own advantages too, although obviously that feeling of emptiness may not be one of them, but there are many other things I know that I can definitely say, obviously, and I'm sure, Meg, you're going to have a lot of things that you want to add into this, but just being in control ultimately, I think, because you know yourself, you know how you build.
I'm so picky.
You know all of your own standards. There's nobody else who knows better than you do. You have full control. There's nobody to have to worry about managing or to have to deal with. And I know that you have just the complete liberty of doing whatever you want to do. And so it's all in your hands, practically. And I'm sure you probably have things you want to add to that, Meg. But
well, going along that line, it also requires that you have enough ideas to be able to accomplish something. Because I know, not to relate it back too much to group projects, but some people are always wanting feedback. Like, does this look good? Does this look good? Does this look good? But solo, you have to make all those decisions yourself.
That's true.
Otherwise, you're not going to get far, because you won't get far just asking people for their feedback all the time if you're trying to do a solo project. So at some point, you have to just make your own creative decisions and just do it.
Yeah. At worst, I'd say, to add to that also, in another form of this, we may have also talked about this in a previous episode, but I guess a more extreme form of wanting feedback is wanting validation. That lack of self-confidence can sometimes plague someone. I know people who've done solo projects, but they've been so afraid to just own them and continue to work with them because they're like, this is probably going to look bad, or people are going to say this is terrible or something. So I've always seen them asking around. They're like, well, hey, how's this? Does this look good? Does this look okay? I mean, there's validity in that. Like there's good in it because of being able to just get immediate feedback on a work in progress build. But if your basis all of a sudden relies on that kind of stuff just to get validation from your peers, then there comes a point, I feel like, when the actual intent of building to build, to enjoy that, or to complete the project goes away. It becomes then more of a project to please rather than a project to, to showcase your talent or your creative mind as a Minecrafter. So that's another thing too, I think, just to kind of add to that whole feedback idea. And I find that's something that I know, especially people who might be building on their own for the first time, or they're probably starting to post for the first time, and it's just trying to find where that, or finding all those opportunities to get validation, just to, I guess, boost confidence almost in a sense in that way. But I know there are other ways, even just through patience and time and experience, that would also lead to that kind of confidence also. I don't know. That's just something I just figured that just came to mind.
Yeah, solo projects definitely also take a lot longer, which is probably another reason why some people don't like them as much because they just want to get it done as quickly as possible. So they think, oh, I need more help. But no, you're just gonna have to just take all that time and work on it. I still prefer it. Just for the creative decisions alone. I didn't have too much else to point out about solo projects, because that really is the biggest thing, is just having full control of everything.
Yeah.
Did you have any other specifics about it?
I mean, I'm a firsthand testimony to the timing of builds, because with the new city project I'm working on, dear me, imagine how long I spend or don't spend on each house or each aspect of that city project. Because I have the timeline in my control, I never get anything done. So it's always going to be where something's going to push on for 3, 4, 5 weeks, and I'll say, okay, maybe I'll try to get it done today. And then 3 weeks later, I've maybe only finished another 5% of it, and it keeps going until eventually maybe 5 or 6 months later, then I get it done. And so at this rate, you're going to have to expect a completed city done maybe in 90 years. So... and that's
solo projects definitely take a lot more self-discipline.
Yes, that's another thing too then. So I think it's because not only are you in control of what you want to do from a creative perspective, you also then have to be in control of yourself with your discipline to be able to get something done, something that I'm working on heavily, aside from obviously my busyness throughout the week, because if this is your first time tuning in, or whatever it is, I do stuff full time during the day. So everything I do related to Minecraft is now only secondary to that. So my time is already limited as it is, but I need to
that's the same for me too,
get that discipline. Oh yeah, and then that's the thing too. So being able to discipline myself to, when I have the time allotted to sit down and try to get a build done, or work on it or something by myself, it's just getting that discipline. So I guess with all that ability or all that control that you have in your hands comes the need to know where your, maybe not just where your limits are, but kind of just how you work. It's almost like you're kind of just managing yourself and dictating to yourself what you're going to do. Give
yourselves maybe small goals to accomplish.
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, I just hate leaving a project unfinished, so I'll keep at it for as long as it takes. But I know some people do get bored of building by themselves after a short time.
Yeah.
I'm just not that way. Maybe it's because I just know that how I'll feel once the build is done. So I can go through the whatever you want to call it, the agony of doing a solo project for months on end, because it can be agonizing sometimes. It can feel like it's never going to end, like the carousel. It was never going to end.
I was going to go right back to that example because that's the perfect one, since knowing that you had to go with every single horse per stream, for instance, even before getting to the actual route of the carousel.
And fun fact about the carousel, I was debating if I should open it up to possibly get people to help me design the horses if I provided the model of the horse and let them design it. But then the more I thought about it, I kept bringing up that idea in my head. I'm like, I wonder if I should get help on this, because I know it's a huge project and it's going to take me a long time. But then it all boiled down to, but I don't know if they're going to do a good job, and I want to do it myself, and I want it to be my build. And so I didn't get any help on it because I wanted it to be 100% my work. Maybe that's a bit selfish, but
but then again,
that's how I think.
Yeah, you also don't want to spend time on quality control either, right? To sort of restrain or restrict the creativity of somebody,
and go through all of the explaining and like make sure it looks like this and not like this and not like this. Like I would have been very, very picky anyway. So it was a lot better for me to just do it myself.
I see, that makes sense. Although when I start to think about for my case, I always thought to myself, well, okay, if I wanted to open up my city project to anyone to help build, let's say for infrastructure, for
would
the
you
roads,
get picky about how they're doing stuff?
I would say to a degree, but maybe it would be only things like scale and maybe just for consistency. Yeah, you have to set a standard, because it's like, and that's what I was thinking, where I was going to say, I'm actually going to write up documents that outline the standard, but not like meticulous documents that say everything must be of this. There will be certain very stringent or very, very strict requirements or anything like that, but just standards, obviously, because I don't want the city to look like a whole mishmash, like too much of a mishmash that there's no unity. Because I think, at least in my own opinion, I know that there are cities that are collaborative, that there are a bunch of people that come together and build it, but you can tell that you can see the different parts where people have built it, and it almost like there are some cities that may lack unity as a result, whereas there could be some others where you still see the creative freedoms that were given to the people that contributed, but there's still something that unifies it. So I think that with group work, and I guess it obviously also depends on the kind of project you want to do, if you don't mind going back to group work for a sec, I think a good group project would also have some kind of unity in it, though. And although that's pretty hard to achieve, especially if there are more people or very contrasting interests or preferences in a build, but I think at least in some way finding something that unifies a build or some kind of a project, I guess taking Minecraft, I find that those tend to really show kind of a stellar version of group work. Now, it may not necessarily be what they call a groupthink where everybody says yes and nobody questions it, but it's just probably coming together in some way and pooling all of your ideas together. I mean, this probably sounds a lot easier said than done, and I know it is a lot easier said than done, but just finding something that you can still let everybody express themselves creatively, but obviously there must be, at the end of the day, it was a group project for a reason, right? It's not just everybody individually showcasing themselves. Yeah,
that does kind of tie back to what I was talking about with the fairy tale build, where I just had to let people, do it in their style, but I still had restrictions on it has to be the specific scale.
Yeah.
I want this to be a specific scale. So I did give them guidelines for some things. Or if, for example, the little village that comes out of the book, the only restrictions I gave there was this is the color palette. Use this for the roofs, use these blocks for the walls and stuff. But as far as how the houses were designed, those were all different based on the builder.
Yeah.
But they were all using, the same palette.
Yeah.
So as long as you have some kind of guidelines,
yes,
so you know what to expect, so you know what you're going for.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. So you definitely don't want to be too strict on them, but you also want to make sure there's some guidance. Otherwise, then it could also become much
It depends
harder.
on what the project is, how strict you want to be.
That's true. That's true. And even if you consider yourself the one who calls the project together or is kind of the one leading the project now, there could be cases where you're thinking about this, but somebody else is managing the project, and maybe you might be at the mercy of how they run it. But I guess, it all really depends. But I guess I know for me with my city, that's what I'd probably do, where I'd say, here are some guidelines, because you don't want roads to start really, having one segment that looks like it probably is for player-sized cars, and then another segment where these massive cars would fit, or everything looks like it doesn't quite fit there. So it's just those kinds of things, little specifics here and there, but obviously areas where creativity should be expressed. I definitely want to try to make sure I represent that. So, and this is something like I know there's a community of people that I've been seeing that do a lot of collabs, and it's honestly amazing whenever I see people do collaborative builds. Like, I know on Instagram I've seen people work together and kind of do something.
I honestly wish I could do collabs, but I just know deep down I would not enjoy it. But sometimes I wish I could. Or maybe, I just know that I'd be too picky and I'd be wanting to fix everything.
Maybe we should start you somewhere. Maybe we'll have to figure something out. I may have to start.
Time is also a factor, because I have too many. Yeah. I have too many personal projects that I want to do that I don't want anyone else involved in.
Yes.
So
yeah,
I don't know. I'm just very picky.
Well, you know what? I'm open to trying it. Obviously, I'm probably going to fail miserably to begin with, but it's probably just at least to start somewhere. But if you're listening and if you want to recommend anything to either of us in ways we can get started in being able to go with group projects, then we'd love to hear that kind of feedback too. And just anything else, if even your own thoughts, I think, just on how you work with solo projects or group projects.
Or which one do you prefer?
Yeah.
Group or solo?
It'd be funny if we had a poll on this, and come the next episode, we said, let's see how many people are more solo oriented versus how many more people are group oriented.
I should do that. I should do an Instagram poll.
Maybe you should do that. We could. But anyways, did you have anything else on group projects,
I think
Meg?
no, I think that's it. I think we covered everything for group and solo. I think I've said everything I needed to say and more.
And more, which is the interesting part because I never realized all the different little things that went into solo versus group projects until I started kind of expressing them now and talking about them a bit. So maybe I will have to go out and figure out opportunities to get to know more people and see all the different styles, because I know there's probably a bunch of different working styles out there that I have not yet encountered or maybe not be familiar with. So I definitely am open to getting to learn a little more, get to know more people, maybe one day be able to comfortably get into collaborating as well. Honestly, yeah, I look forward to that. And again, hearing from you. So, Meg, I know that we have all of our socials and all that plugged in YouTube. We have it at the end of every description, every episode on our Spotify, on the Apple Podcasts. Am I missing anything else?
I don't think so. I think that's all of it for us for today. So I hope you all have a great day, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.